Hey everybody, this is Sooty Will, here for the director's commentary of Episode 3, Green Grocery Engine. So before we start, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone for the very warm response to Episode 3. I was really happy that everyone enjoyed it. And thank you all especially for over 5,000 subscribers in recent weeks. I cannot believe that in these few years my channel has grown that much. So I hope that my next videos are worth the long wait. Thank you again for all the support. Alright, so let's get right into it. So for episode 3, I wanted to do a completely original story. So while the eyesight test and Henry's hoax were loosely based on the Wikia articles, this was the first one that was solely based on an original idea that I had. I will say though, it might have been partially inspired by a joke in Percy Does the Thing Too by HalfBaked 8. Because there's actually a joke in that video that mentions how Percy has gotten covered in food so many times, and I remember thinking, that's a good point. So my story may have been loosely inspired off that one joke in that video. I'll put the link in the description. And overall, I just wanted to do a story where a character wasn't necessarily in the wrong. I wanted to do a story about, triumph and perseverance, and a story with a message about how failure is never a guarantee, and how failure is never final and it doesn't define who you are. So instead of having an episode where an engine does something wrong or acts selfish or mean and then learns a lesson, I wanted to tell a story where an engine is doing something awesome and you want to root for them the whole time. So to start off with the narration, I mentioned how Percy is the junior member in the principal team of engines, which is a minor reference to one of the character galleries, which if you grew up with the classic Thomas DVDs, I'm sure you've heard that line at least a few times before. Not much to say about this little intro here, except that what I did learn is how to cover up little mistakes or bloopers in your footage with sound effects. So if you watch this clip closely here, Percy kind of starts and stops really quickly. He kind of jerks along on this section of track. So what I learned to do was to cover up those little mistakes with sound effects. So I added a little, clanking or a biffing sound effect whenever he doesn't run smoothly on the track. Another mistake I had to fix was that my original narration was far too loud. So if you watch the bloopers, you'll know that I kept saying, "Percy, the small engine is a Percy, Percy, Percy," in the microphone. So I had to keep re-recording it because my mic was turned too loud and I kept blowing air into the microphone. Okay, and the first real scene in this story is, of course, Percy and James here at the shed. I also kind of wanted to do a story reminiscent of Tale of the Brave, where Percy is the main hero, Thomas is the friend who supports him along the way, and James is more of the antagonist. I also wanted to make a story where Thomas and Percy's friendship really comes through in this episode, because so often they're always bickering or kind of being frenemies, whereas in this story, I really wanted to show why Thomas and Percy are friends, and have Thomas be supportive of Percy for this, especially when James is being a jerk. So, of course, here I make reference to all the times that Percy has gotten himself covered in food when pulling food trains, with the chocolate factory and the baggage trolley and all those different accidents. And I'm not sure if I did this by accident, but if you look in the background, Diesel passes by with a train, specifically of food wagons. So he's pulling the ice cream van and the syrup tanker and the salt wagon and all those things. I have no idea if that was an accident, but I like to think that I did it on purpose because I honestly don't remember. Now this shot here of Thomas under the coal hopper took a long time because for some reason in my script I wrote that Thomas is under a coal hopper, even though he doesn't have to be. It wouldn't make any difference. So what I did was that I had to 3D model and then 3D print and paint a coal hopper because I couldn't get my hands on an official Bachmann one, if they even make them. So that's why this shot here took so long to do, was because I had to print it and paint it. If you look in the background, you'll also notice the Sir Topham Hatt poster I included from Magic Railroad there. And as James puffs away, so after Thomas mentions the accident with the melons at Brandon Docks, and there's a flashback there, James mutters to himself, "They weren't melons, they were cantaloupes," which I thought would just be a funny line to add in. So this next scene of Percy leaving Farquhar, I actually intercut with shots from 2019 and 2021, which I mentioned in the eyesight test commentary. I rebuilt a miniature Farquhar sheds of Percy leaving, because for some reason I forgot to film that shot back in 2019. Now this little montage here I was very pleased with because I was able to use the exact same sets as in the eyesight test. So these shots here of Percy passing by Hackenbeck were filmed back in 2019 while I was filming the eyesight test. And in fact, they were filmed even before I had finished writing the script. I just knew that I wanted to get Percy passing by just in case I needed to make this montage. And I also like how it keeps the continuity between different episodes. And of course, here you'll recognize Sudreen Afro's traveling theme. It's a great theme. I like it a lot. And even though you can't see it very well, there's actually a van in the background of this shot which says Hop's Family Farm, which is a Zootopia reference, obviously. And at last, we get to Bridlington Goods Yard. Obviously, I chose this yard as a reference to Journey Beyond Sodor. In this set here, you'll notice that there is a Looney Tunes Acme container with Wile E. Coyote on it. The Wooden Railway Ferdinand, Airy and Bert also pass by. And for this set, I really wanted to make it seem like a brand new location. So I tried my best to use non-Thomas engines like that little shunter and the diesel in the background. I also used many obscure whistle sound effects, so I used some sound effects that weren't commonly associated with Thomas characters. And I also threw in some sound effects to the Microsoft Train Simulator from 2002, which I used to play with my dad a lot, so I thought it'd be a nice throwback to just have some old sound effects in there. And lastly, what I did to differentiate this set from the Thomas ones was have the non-Thomas backdrop in the background. So I got some just generic England or countryside backdrops there, which I tried to use for almost all of the mainland sets. So whenever you're on Sodor, it always has the Sodor backdrop, whereas on the mainland or wherever, it has this generic countryside backdrop. And of course, I made my obligatory Zootopia reference when Percy says, "I'll have these trucks delivered before noon."
100 tickets. I'm not gonna write 100 tickets. I'm gonna write 200 tickets before noon.
Okay, now for the traveling montage, I was very excited to use Headmaster Hastings' Percy's theme. It was absolutely pivotal to this montage. I was really excited to film and edit it. So let me explain how the traveling shots work in this episode, because there are quite a few of them. So basically what I do is I set Percy and a couple of trucks on a piece of track. And then I build sort of a miniature backdrop on a giant board of wood or masonite, and I slide that backdrop behind the engines in the background, so it looks like they're passing them. And then the tricky part is that without moving the engine, I make their wheels turn while they're standing still, and then mask the wheels over top of the other footage. So that way, even though the engine itself isn't moving, the backdrop is moving behind it and the wheels are turning in place. And after that, I also add a little bit of a shaking effect just to make it look like the camera is following the engine as they're traveling along. And so throughout the episode, whenever you see shots of Percy or the trucks or Thomas or James, the engines themselves never actually move. It's always the backdrop that I'm sliding on a big wooden board behind them. So that's how I do my traveling shots with the trucks and the engines. It's a bit risky because if the engine moves in between the backdrop sliding and the wheels turning, the whole effect gets messed up. But when it does work, it works really well. For these shots of the tunnel here, I actually got some real rocks beside a riverbed that I brought home and then just used them to film. And now these shots of Percy traveling across the mainland, I tried to use a whole bunch of new props that I had gotten just recently in 2021 or 2022. So, for example, this big stone tunnel, this little bridge here, and the overpass at the station here. And I also try to use like other little generic like sheds and stations and shacks that I haven't used before. Again, just to show that Percy is in a brand new place and it's not just generic Sodor countryside. Now, the truck's banter here, when they can't seem to remember Percy's real name, is sort of poking fun at all the parents who can't seem to remember the names of the engines. I'm assuming that you've all probably met someone who confused Edward for Thomas or Henry for Percy. And so the whole joke with the truck saying, "Oh, I thought his name was Henry, I thought his name was Duck," is poking fun at those people who mix up all the engines' names. And also, there's, of course, the joke with the 99 troublesome trucks in the yard, obviously a parody of 99 bottles of beer on the wall, which I thought would just be the most annoying thing for the trucks to sing. Like, I thought that would just drive an engine insane. However, we see in the episode that Percy doesn't let the trucks get the better of him or distract him, which shows how much he's grown since his previous accidents, like in Percy Takes the Plunge, or like Percy James and the Fruitful Day, and all those episodes. Now, this shot here of Percy rounding the hill was actually my attempt at recreating Shen Valley from the new series. It doesn't really look like Shen Valley, but that's kind of what it was loosely based on. And this shot here was actually the first shot I filmed of Percy and his train back in 2020, I think. So after I filmed this shot, I had solidified what train Percy was going to pull throughout the rest of the episode. So every time I filmed new shots of Percy and the train, I had to look back to this shot to see how I ordered all the trucks. Now, another trick that I use in quite a few sets is hiding the edge of the set with different objects. So for example, in this set before Vickerstown, which I call the pre-Vickerstown sidings, the shed off to the right and the signal on the left are actually blocking out the edge of the set and the bottom of the backdrop. So if you're ever building sets, I would recommend to find creative ways of just hiding all the edges with the mountains or the trucks or bushes or whatever you can. Ah yes, and finally we get to Vickerstown Station, the last scene that I filmed for this episode because I was dreading having to build it. So this scene could have taken place at any station or any part on the main line. It wouldn't have made any difference. But I knew that Vickerstown was like the station that people associate with engines leaving and coming to Sodor from the mainland. So I kind of put off building this set for a long time because I had no idea how to do it. But basically how it was built was that the whole station is elevated on top of 2 wooden blocks, which are the exact same blocks I used to build Tidmouth Station, which you see in the very next scene. On top of those blocks there is just a big wooden base on top. I used the wooden platforms from Tidmouth Station again. I used the Brendan Warehouse platform, as you can see on the right. I used Lego lampposts from all the Lego City buildings and some Lego columns from the Lego City Town Hall, I think it's called. The walls and windows were just made out of paper. I just printed different window images and then stuck them on the paper brick walls. And the whole roof is actually a giant glass pane I got from a picture frame. And on top are just a couple of pieces from the Knapford Station set, just to make it look like the roof has some support beams on it, as well as the roof from the wooden railway engine shed. And lastly, the clock tower and the skylight pieces were also from the Lego City Town Hall. I borrowed a lot of things from that set. The whole building was just in pieces after I stole parts of it for this set. So if you watch the behind the scenes, shameless plug, a lot of the trucks dialogue were references to some of my favorite movies or TV shows or Thomas episodes or whatever. So first off, the truck that screams, "Whoa, Percival, whoa!" When I say whoa, I mean whoa, is a reference to Yosemite Sam from Looney Tunes.
Whoa, Camel, whoa, 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 Camel, whoa! When I say whoa, I mean whoa!
The truck that says, "Slow down for pity's sake, you'll buckle me trunnions," is a reference to Wallace from Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
And slow down for pity's sake, you'll buckle me trunnions.
The truck that says, "I'm gonna die, I'm gonna throw up, and then I'm gonna die," is a reference to the Jim Carrey Grinch.
We're gonna die! We're gonna die! I'm going to throw up, and then I'm gonna die!
The truck that says, "Great, we're dead, that's it, I'm dead, you're dead, everybody's dead," is a reference to Nick from Zootopia.
Great, we're dead. We're dead, that's it. I'm dead, you're dead, everybody's dead.
The truck that says, "Yoikes," is a reference to Toad from Busy Going Backwards.
Suddenly, he saw James pulling a long, slow train. Yikes!
The truck that says, "Oh dear," is a reference to Duck from Henry's Hero.
Oh dear, looks like you two got some of the bad cold that arrived today.
The truck that says, "Out of the way, you little blue buckaroo, yee-hoo," is a reference to the Tumbleweed from Magic Railroad.
Follow me, partner. Right this way to Bufferville. Just a walk in the park. You're on your own from here on in, little blue buckaroo.
The truck that says, "Whoa, boy," is a reference to Thomas and the Jet Engine.
But Thomas couldn't stop.
Whoa, boy!
The truck that says, "Ooh, what was that?" is a reference to Sir Topham Hatt from Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday.
What was that? Cried Sir Topham Hatt.
And lastly, the truck that says, "What in the name of Mike? Get us the blazes out of here," is a reference to the conductor from Polar Express.
What in the name of Mike? Get us the blazes out of here!
I also made a reference to Percy and Harold when I say that Percy and the trucks were bucketing along to make up for lost time. Now for this traveling shot here, you'll notice that Toby passes by in the background, but it's the exact same technique that I described earlier. So I basically built a whole bunch of trees and random buildings on a sliding piece of wood, and then I put some tracks and Toby on that sliding piece of wood and pushed that whole section behind Percy. So once again, Percy never actually moves, everything behind him moves and his wheels turn in place, but Percy himself never actually moves. And later I used the same technique with James, where James also slides by Percy, but actually neither him nor Percy are actually moving on their tracks, it's just James and his track behind Percy. Now these traveling shots here, before the crash with Thomas, I got the help of my little brother to help me out with this one. So basically I was able to slide the camera along a section of track all by itself. And I asked my little brother to turn off the power on Thomas's track, but I kept pushing Thomas along with my finger so that his wheels would be skidding along without actually turning. This front shot of Thomas here was another technique I used. I put the trees and the water tower and the signal on some sections of track and just slid those pieces of track alongside Thomas, and then cropped my hands and Thomas's wheels off screen. So this crash I planned way back in 2019, like I showed in my behind the scenes video, a shameless plug again. So how this scene was accomplished was that I built a stunt double for David the truck that gets destroyed in this scene. So basically, I scaled down the Gauge 1 7 plank wagon by JamosTrainos, and with the help of my dad and my little brother, we painted it to look just like the green Bachmann truck. So what I did when I 3D printed the truck was that I just printed it in sections. So I printed each side on its own, I printed each wheel and axle and the whole chassis on its own. And so when the time came to destroy it, I loosely sticky tacked all those pieces together so that the whole truck would just collapse when Thomas jumped on top of it. So on the first try, Thomas just kind of plowed into the truck and just kind of knocked it over. So what I did was that I built a little ramp in between the rails out of Lego pieces, I think, so that Thomas would be able to get a bit of air before he just jumped on top of the truck and demolished it. So if you look closely in this shot, you can see a little ramp that hoisted Thomas in the air so that he could jump on top of the truck. And of course, I also made some custom troublesome truck faces, just some faces of sheer terror as Thomas destroys the truck in the middle. Of course, all the fruit here was just some Lego pieces, but the shot of James getting covered in blueberries was pretty much all edited. I wasn't sure how I wanted to do that at first, because obviously I didn't want to put blue paint on my Bachmann James. So I basically just colored in a couple of sticky tack pieces in purple or blue. So then in Photoshop, I just kind of duplicated all those different blueberry pieces. And I also was able to add a bit of like purple and blue juice or slime, I guess, on James, which I thought made it a lot better. And I think someone noticed this when I was premiering the episode, but someone noticed the Michael Rosen reference here when the one tanker says, "Hard luck, Dave. Always knew you were a bit weak." Which, if you've seen any Michael Rosen videos or YouTube poops, I'm assuming you've probably seen that meme. I'll put it up on screen now.
There's Dave. Hard luck, Dave. Always knew you were a bit weak.
Okay, so after the crash, the Fat Controller, of course, comes up to Percy and says that it's okay, you tried your best, you did everything you could to avoid an accident, and the accident wasn't your fault anyway. So basically, at the ending of this episode, Percy is reassured that he isn't a failure, and that he really has grown and learned from his previous accidents, as we saw earlier. Of course, in this scene, there's also a joke about the signalman falling asleep and how he should be fired. That was because me and my little brother have an in-joke about the signalman always falling asleep. There have been at least 2 or 3 insane train crashes because the stupid signalman was asleep on the job. So that was my explanation to why the signal wasn't working. And in the Fat Controller's dialogue, there's also a reference to that one meme which says, the Fat Controller laughed. "You are wrong," he said. So I threw that in there as well, just to be a little funny. And finally, Thomas, Percy, and James are heading home, and this whole ending scene was meant to be reminiscent of Edward, Gordon, and Henry, where all the engines are puffing home back to back. In this scene, there's also a reference to James and the coaches when Thomas says, "I know the Fat Controller threatened to paint you blue, but I didn't think it would happen in this way." I tried to pay homage to Down the Mine when the 3 engines puff home buffer to buffer, just like in the ending with Gordon and Thomas in Down the Mine. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Special thanks to Mavis M, Sudreen Afro, Angry Bird Fan 98, Headmaster Hastings, and One Tram Band, as always, for their awesome music. Special thanks to GW Shunter for the Thomas sound effects, to JamosTrainos for the Gauge 1 wagon, to the Tinkercad user for the miniature Sooty hat figure. Special thanks to my dad and my little brother for helping to paint the miniature Sooty hat, David the stunt truck, and for their help to build Farquhar Sheds, Vickerstown Station, and Tidmouth Station. And special thanks to you for watching. But wait, there's more. So the reason why I added this little post-credit scene was for 2 reasons. The first reason was because I was recording improv for the Troublesome Trucks, and while I was recording, I had David, the demolished truck, say, "Oh, the pain, oh, agony, I can't feel my frames, I can't feel my buffers, oh, woe is me." And that was just too funny for me not to put in the episode, but I couldn't find any room to fit it in during the crash scene, so I decided to make this little post-credit scene, just so I could include that little bit of improv. And the improv itself is also a reference to Looney Tunes Back in Action when Bugs Bunny says the same thing.
Oh, pain. Oh, agony.
The second reason why I made this post-credit scene was partially poking fun at myself and how I wrote the script. Because the way I wrote the story implies that as Thomas, Percy, and James go home, Edward has to take care of the breakdown train, Thomas's coaches, James's coaches, and the remains of Percy's train. But I figured that I'm sure that Edward can handle all these cars and this huge mess he has to clean up. I'm sure it's fine. So while I was filming this little post-credit scene, I had the tracks going off the table in both directions because the train was so long it couldn't even fit on the table. So on one end of the table, I built sort of an extended bridge so that Edward could puff past the camera. But on the other side of the table, I built the tracks off the cliff where all the trucks could land into a beanbag should they fall off the table. And while I was filming, I think the first couple trucks did fall off the tracks and land in the beanbag, just because there was no room to fit all of them on the table at once. But anyway, that brings us to the very, very end of the episode. So, once again, thank you all very much for watching. This has been the longest commentary yet. I haven't edited it, but I'm assuming it's going to be the longest commentary. As of now, I would say that episode 4, Animal Names, is currently 70% done. It's kind of on hiatus right now because I need to get some new props to film 2 or 3 more scenes, but after those last few scenes, it's pretty much done. In the meantime, I am currently working on some parody music videos featuring Thomas and the Looney Tunes, which I hope will be coming out in the coming weeks. And just keep checking back on my Twitter and my community tab for non-video projects, and especially for non-Thomas projects, because I tend to do more Looney Tunes and Zootopia projects that aren't videos. So once again, thank you all for watching. I still didn't think of a good send-off sentence, so, bye.